the third option. So let's, if you will, bow your head and join me in prayer. Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for bringing us all together, bringing everybody here safely. Thank you for the people who give their time to build your church and to go strongly into the future. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your patience. We ask that you help us to understand what the future holds for us. We ask that we keep our minds open, and we just thank you for the opportunity to share your love and for everybody getting here safely. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Just before, while Leonard's getting ready, you need to move that down. I just want to remind everybody, just to remember, we will do questions and answers at the end. And if you think of something that you really want to ask about, write it down on one of those scraps of paper. We left little tablets on your table, so you can write it down. And then remember to bring it up during the question and answer time. So, yep. And
you want me to stand over here? Yeah, that's perfect.
He wants to zoom
Camera and sound man.
He's going to zoom in on that first.
And then I can move over in front of it maybe?
That way we'll have it on.
Yeah. Okay. Long time no see.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. So I get to present in the event we sell our property, and we would continue as Trinity Lutheran Church and find a smaller building, venue that is more appropriate for our size. So here are my thoughts. If we are fortunate enough to sell our property, then it is one of the options we have as a congregation to consider what to do. Depending on the amount of money we end up with, because it could be $3,000, it could be $2.5 million, it could be $2 million, we don't know. We have no idea. We don't even know when it's going to sell. But we wanted to come out and at least give you an idea of what our thoughts are. So depending on the amount, it would greatly depend on whether we would rent or buy. One idea is to rent an existing building or storefront. We would most likely have to go in and do leasehold improvements. We'd have to spend some money to make it look like a church building. And of course, if we were lucky enough to find a vacant, smaller church building to rent, then we would have to do less leasehold improvements. So renting frees up funds otherwise used to buy a property. So we're thinking about either renting or buying. The funds that we have, depending on how much that is, if we rent, we wouldn't have to put out, $1 million, $1.2 million to buy a property, and then we'd have less money. So our funds would actually last longer, and it would give us the, let's see, it would give us the ability to call a full-time pastor. We'd obviously have similar expenses that we do now that are in our current budget. The pastor's salary and benefits would be a lot more, but if we received a pretty good sum for the property, we would be able to afford to call a full-time pastor. So we would save money once we sell it and relocate by moving the furniture. Next week or I think it's next week, we'll be talking about what we've done as far as the furniture and inventories and stuff. But we already have most of the things we need to go into a new facility. So we wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on furnishing the new facility. We have that covered. So that would be more economical for us to do. And as remaining as Trinity, we would remain our own company, our own church. We'd have our endowment fund still. We'd still be able to give grants out to mission grants and educational grants. I looked online just recently, and the options that are for rent or for sale in our valley aren't great for what we want to accomplish. But we don't have to do that right now. So basically, God has a vision, he has a direction for us. We don't know what that is yet, but when that time comes, then hopefully, prayerfully, he will have an option. Once he closes a door, he opens a door. So he'll have a door for us to go to and relocate. And I'll take questions after the session ends. Thank you.
See what I could do without ripping it, Mary. Yeah, you can see, you can tell I didn't go to school, huh?
You didn't go to teachers.
Okay, I'm here to talk about these options here. This is our, two things about the options we have. A lot of these options were, there's a lot of options that we've talked about as we've gone through this, but the council, at any time, the council has come up with these, we've narrowed them down to these three main options. And of course, there's pros and cons for all of them. All three of these options have a lot of, there's pluses and minuses for both. So the one I'll be talking about is to continue as Trinity Lutheran, but cohabitate with Spirit of Joy at their facility. So what we would do is we would pay them rent, and we would have to pay them not only a rent for the space usage, but a portion of their utilities and the cost of keeping their facility open. We would remain a separate entity with our own tax ID, so we'd have control of our money, we'd have our own church council. So we'd continue as this Trinity unit, but we'd be using their facility. We'd be sharing Pastor Brian's salary, which I know would help them because I know they're struggling. He's working part-time with them right now. So, if we could share that salary, have Pastor Brian as both pastors leading both churches. And then if we, if we sell our property, we could do this. If we don't sell our property, we can do this because we can rent. The idea is we can rent this facility out to either the way we're doing it or to another church. Again, those are, like Leonard said, just options that God has, whatever is in store for us. But that's another option, is to just, like we have the door here, we could rent some more, another church service, whatever would be appropriate. But then that would be enough money to maintain the property, And then our collections and everything we get would be going to our expenses. So the idea there is if we get any bonus money from renting this property, that would help us too. But that's not necessarily needed. The idea is to at least maintain this where we don't have to make any expenditures into the property. So that's option number 2. Thank you. Bring for this application.
I'd like to add on to his a little bit. This idea of cohabitating with Spirit of Joy actually came from one of their people. We didn't think of it. Somebody over there thought of it. And it was really kind of interesting. When the council first heard it, we thought, wow, that's very creative. No questions yet, unless you're just dying then, I know. I'd rather we wait at the end, and then we will definitely be doing as many questions as we can cover. You can see our subjects tonight don't take too long. Mine won't take very long either. Okay. All right. So here's another option. If we are unable to find a buyer, right now we're feeling like, oh, how are we ever going to find a buyer? We're almost finished with 2 years of being under a binder to sell with our realtor. And we originally were told it may take 5 to 10 years. So I know we're getting antsy, but it takes a long time to sell a church. A property this big isn't something that just, flips overnight. For lots of reasons, we talked about some of them last week with the zoning. It's zoned as a church, and we could get into that more, but not right at this point. I just want to talk about what if we don't find a buyer, and time goes on, and we still haven't sold it. I don't know how many years that means, I don't think, only God knows that. I don't know. I couldn't venture a guess. But if we are at the point where we are unable to provide meaningful worship among our members and or can no longer pay our bills, then we need to consider something more drastic. At this point, we are really well budgeted. We stay under budget. We function very well. About $2,500 a month comes in rent. That helps us immensely. And then the rest is what we bring in with our tithing. So we do have quite a bit of income, partly because we have quite a bit of property. So we have a lot to offer. Intern Pastor Rachel, I didn't even see you come in. Thank you. Okay. I'm glad you're here. So if we get to this point, we will have to think seriously about dissolving. If we have to dissolve our church, then we would probably want to merge with Spirit of Joy. If we want to stay in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, which is more of the kind of church that we reflect at this church, and I think that's probably what we'd want to stay with. We would sell our inventory, which when you don't know and haven't done inventory, and I certainly didn't know this until I did it, we have so much inventory. It's worth a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just to get a pipe organ like what's in our loft, and the pipes is over, it's about $50,000 for the pipes alone. You know, I don't want to give you a real guess, but it was in the hundreds of thousands to buy one of those for a church. So we have a lot. We have so many crosses that we could take with us to a new place that we'd have to pick which ones we want. So we're not short on things to take if we do move to another spot. But if we sell it all, we will have a lot more money too, not just the money from selling the buildings and the property, but we have a lot. And just all the chairs and the tables and the, you know, it's amazing the amount of stuff we have. And then we have it inventoried in a binder that's that thick. We'll talk about that next week. Okay, we would give Spirit of Joy our endowed funds, and maybe they'd have some kids to give it to. And we would share all our assets with them and become one with Spirit of Joy. Pros and cons on that might be, after all the mortgage and we had paid it off and all the stuff we've done, and it's sad, it's hard to let it all go. But one of the pros is that a lot of us are getting older, and it's harder and harder to find people that want to do the work that it takes to run a church. And we have to be honest with ourselves about that. You know, if we join another church, although a lot of them are getting up there in age too, I know a lot of their members, they're not much different than we are, but they do have some younger families. And they have a few kids. They don't have a lot. So there aren't many churches out there that really have young families anymore, except for those new name brand type churches and things like that. But most of the mainline churches do not. And we're all pretty much in the same boat. I have lots of friends at the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church. They're all asking me, I'll bet you're doing better than us. And I'm going, I don't know that we're doing better than you. You know, 4 years ago we still had about 80 people coming to church, and now we're down to about 40. You know, it's on a good day. For one of these past weeks, we did have almost 60. But, you know, people, even our own members aren't coming all the time. So it's, you know, there might come a day when we have to decide that this really is the best for us. And that's where we would go. Okay, so without looking at all those details, actually, I think I'm going to leave
Take
these
them all off, yeah.
off. Yeah, I'm going to take them all off. I want you to be able to look at it. It might help you think on what you want to ask. And I'm going to be the scribe, or I'm going to try to write as fast as I can.
Yeah, Mary will write your questions down, and Leonard will answer them all because he's the answer guy. And I'll just sit here and listen in case Leonard can't hear. That sounds good to you, Leonard?
God bless.
So, again, as we get to the question and answers, remember, we're just discussing options. Nothing has to be decided tonight. This is about informing the congregation. Hopefully everybody who's here will take this to the people who ask. Most of the people I see here know, we're all here all the time. But there's people who aren't here and they don't know what we're doing. So it's good to inform them also. So, okay, first question I see.
Hey, this is a question that's going back to something Mary said about us blending with Spirit of Joy. That was brought up before when we were talking about redevelopment. And that had come from the representative from the
From the Pacific Senate,
from the
yeah.
Senate. And they had talked at that time whether or not, this was about 2 to 3 years ago.
Before we became a redevelopment church, that was an option that we
Right.
looked
We
at.
talked about, but we
Yeah.
didn't talk about the idea of us keeping our own
Name,
church council,
yeah,
our own
name.
corporation, and just being there,
Yeah.
using their facility.
Right.
And, maybe we might even have our own services, we would be paying part of the salary and they'll have theirs. Or we could choose either one, because we probably would want reciprocity. Sometimes you want to be at church early so you can go to a family event,
Oh,
or
yeah,
vice
it was more of
versa.
a blending in of the two congregations.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
total blend or cohabitation, which
Yeah.
is their idea was.
Yeah,
to
that's
help-
different. That's a separate entity, just using the same facility. And one thing we had to remember is, well, this is my opinion, one thing we haven't ever tried blending that I know of. I mean, maybe we have, but we've never been to Spirit of Joy as a congregation to share. Have we? Okay, well then, I think I went to one, you're right. And so we've done it, so
It's
I mean,
crowded.
and then the vote, and then I think we did, I do remember now, and we took a vote after that, and it was split down the line, whether we should
Yeah.
split or not. So that's always, it's an emotional issue, a tough one. So, Shereen?
I was just gonna say, in option 3, can we just keep renting this property and move someplace else? Like option 2?
Yeah, just rent.
I'd like to add to that too, answer
You're
that.
talking, is that this one you're talking about?
Option 3?
Well,
Option 3.
Uh-huh.
We can't sell it, we dissolve, we back the money.
But we can't walk away from the church. It's still our property. We all own this property.
So we, can we?
So
keep
even if we
renting?
went there and decided to join them, we still have to watch over this property,
Yeah.
take care of it, be responsible.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah.
You
We
could rent
own
it.
this property, so we can be making money while we're still trying to
Right,
sell it. So
right.
it could take a few years of that going on while we're going to church there and that we're still selling this property. There will definitely be an overlap.
Yeah,
So it still has to be responsible. if
I think you could not dissolve as a church when you're still collecting rent here. So that part, you couldn't, you'd still have to have a tax ID. In order to collect rent, and that's what the church is, a tax ID
Right,
number.
so
But the
technically,
activity-
we wouldn't
Uh-huh,
be
yeah,
dissolved
yeah.
until we can get, free of
For-
the property.
If I remember right, in our Constitution, if the church dissolves as a congregation, unless I'm wrong, that the property goes to the ELCA.
That-
That is true. They don't want it, and they've told us dozens of times
Yeah,
that
you're
do
right.
not want to have to take care of our problem.
Get that in writing.
Yeah.
No, truly, they don't. They've got a couple they had to take recently, and they're just, it
Yeah.
takes another whole person to run all that property stuff.
But you're right, that is, in our bylaws, it is that if we dissolve, they get the endowment funds, everything. But-
Well,
Is that-
originally it said that our endowment funds only go away if we stop being Trinity Lutheran
Right,
Church.
right.
So if we cohabitate,
Then we still have it, right.
because we still will be.
And that's the key, is the tax ID number. When you go through it, it's like any corporation, your tax ID has to be dissolved, it has to be, retired with the federal government. So then and they determine any taxes that are due at that time. So if you sold this property, you could have back taxes or something that would come off that, but I know we don't, but that's what it's about.
Yeah. Any other questions on that?
Let me just share something from my heart. My concern is not having enough money to make the property pay for itself. I think we could probably find a church that would want to rent our office and sanctuary, which would give us funds to maintain the things that are breaking around here. My concern is the worship part of it, being able to provide a valuable, worship to our members. Rachel, God bless her, she's only here for about another, year and 3 months or 2 months or whatever that might be. And she'll probably get a call to another church. So my concern is not having a minister person ministering to our needs. Pastor Brian can certainly help us, but having a pastor in the pulpit every Sunday, we had an opportunity for Mary to talk to us one Sunday. That's because we just couldn't find these retired pastors to come in and preach. They are busy. A lot of churches in our synod are having a similar problem like we are. They don't have a full-time pastor. They're having to go out and find people to preach just like we are. So that would be my main concern. I think we'll have the finances to go on for quite a while. The only thing I feel is that meaningful worship on Sunday mornings, that's the kicker for me. So,
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people,
yeah.
we want to go to church on Sunday, we want to worship. That's what brings us together.
Is cohabitating and blending the same thing?
No.
No.
Explain that.
Okay, blending means we would actually join them. We would give them our money.
Say merge.
We would
So
merge.
merge.
We would merge, yeah, we would become part of Spirit of
We
Joy.
would be one.
And
One
Trinity
church.
would be gone.
Yeah, and they don't want to join us, so we would join them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but
That's good, cohabitating is separate entity. We're Trinity
cohabitate
Lutheran.
means you live together, but you do your own thing.
Does that mean we'd have our own separate service?
Yeah,
Good,
Well,
yeah, and we will pay separately for the minister, and we will help pay for half the rent or whatever
Right.
it is.
I think the answer for that is we'd have to talk to Pastor Brian about that.
Ryan.
I think the last time I was in conversation with him was that their thought was having 2 services there, we could pick and choose what services we would want to attend. Now, if the majority of our members wanted to go to one service, then that would solve that problem. If somebody had an activity on a Sunday and needed to leave early, they would come to the early service and leave. So, but I think that's going to be up to Pastor Brian and us to discuss, and also their council to discuss, and when it gets to that point.
Would that include the musicians?
We don't have any.
Yeah,
They
they
have-
have, yeah.
They have-
If we blend it, we
Well,
would
we-
include it, if we
regular
did not,
musicians.
if we were
No,
cohabiting, we would not.
Technically, it would be,
Yeah, if we cohabited, it would not.
That's all up
It
for,
would not.
for
It's up to them.
It's up for
unless
discussion.
we hire them to
Unless you
come
pay
to
them.
us.
And if that's if they were willing to.
Yeah.
I know the,
Their musicians are volunteers, and I know them well.
yeah, me too. And they're pretty burned out, they get burned out on it, they're tired, they're the
Well,
same.
and they're our age, they're older.
Rachel, did you have a comment?
I very picked up on it.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, did I step on your? Okay.
Has any of these ideas been discussed with Spirit of Joy? Any of them?
Well, like Mary said, the one was brought up by them, the actually cohabitating was brought to us by Spirit of Joy. The idea of having, but I think we have, right?
Jeff, and who
You
went
did.
with you, Jeff, and went over to meet with them? Leonard?
I did.
It wasn't a real positive meeting.
It wasn't a real, that's correct.
Well, it wasn't let's just say, it was not an inclusive meeting where they wanted our ideas. So when we make that initial contact, whenever that is, the next contact, we're going to have to set some ground rules and have them understand that we have concerns, we want a voice at the table. And if there's no voice at the table, they're starting out not in a great position for us.
Negatively.
Yeah.
But if we cohabitate, it's not like
Don't
we
need
have to
that.
have a voice at the table. We're just filling in, we're going to be one of the services. They're welcome to come to ours, and we're welcome to go to theirs on an individual basis.
Right.
But they're going to function as 2
And we
separate
have our own
churches.
church
Right,
council,
we
and
have
our
our
own
own
way the
secretary.
property would be shared, but we have our own separate
Yeah.
So-
administrative task. And,
Yeah.
And our tithing and our offering goes to our church.
right, we still have that tax ID number, exactly, right? But
And
you
then we
still
would
have
pay
to,
rent.
but you still have to have some kind of form of cooperation, though. I would hope that they,
That would be
I mean, yeah, because we're bringing, I mean, hopefully they see that we're bringing a lot to their church too. I mean, there's a lot.
Cohabitating would be if we sell this property.
Either or.
Not necessarily.
Yes, yeah, that, one of the options is to not sell the property, rent it, and collect enough money to maintain the facility, but yet go over there and cohabitate, so we have worship. I like what exactly what Leonard's saying. We don't have a full-time pastor here. That's why we're doing so great financially. We're doing great. We're paying all the bills. So the idea is like meaningful worship. What is that? That's having a good worship leader. You know, and we've had some great ones fill in, but we haven't had a permanent one for years.
So the main advantage of cohabitating is that we sort of, it comes with a pastor in-house, that we will come to both, he'll preach at both services, even though he's preaching at two different churches in the same building.
Yeah, that's probably the main advantage. I mean, there's other advantages too. You have to look at, you're not spreading yourself in here, you know. There's a lot of pros and cons, but that'd probably be the biggest pro, I would think.
Debbie?
Yes, Debbie.
Did Brian say a yay to that?
Brian has said yes, he's willing to lead both churches, you know, and he's into the idea because he's only working part-time.
And their church came up with this idea of us cohabitating.
Right.
So this was not initially our idea.
I think they've been thinking a little deeper lately and realized that we're going to come in with a pot of gold.
Yeah.
It's going to help them a lot. And it's going to help pay for their pastor, which I'm sure they'd like to be able to give him his full salary and benefits. But they can't because they don't have enough money. So he's hired as a part-time.
But
And
that
that's
shouldn't
it.
be any reason that we do that.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying
No.
they realize that
So definitely not, you're right.
we have more to give than they think.
Yes.
We are a lot more valuable than we think, and we need to have a say at the table. And that wasn't the way they approached these gentlemen when they went there.
Yeah, like you went in there with your hat in
First
hand
time.
up there.
It was only, you will do what we say, and this is what we want, and this is what we would expect from you.
Debbie?
You know?
So
Not very
was
well.
it presented at their council meeting before you guys went over there, as I remember?
I don't remember that. do you?
I don't think we attended their council meeting to make a presentation. I think it was just brought to their
I
council.
think it was, it was executive, there was an executive committee, two of the executive committees, wasn't it? President, vice president.
No, it was just the two of us, and I think they had their whole
Council.
council.
Yeah,
But you were the president and vice president at the time, right?
yeah, President, Vice President, yeah.
Well,
Jack? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Regarding the sale of the church, have we really come down with the show? We've had this fixed price, you know, that we've kind of been trying to sell the church for, which may be out somebody's budget. What price would we be willing to sell the church for that would be amenable to us, and then maybe bring the price down to a level where somebody may be able to afford it? One of the problems we run into now too is interest rates are becoming much higher. So if somebody wants to finance something,
Harder.
you know, we've kind of got out of this window of these great interest rates, and they're not going to come in on any kind of property. So to me, if we need to have maybe some kind of an idea of what would be acceptable, we're not getting any bids now.
Right.
But if you brought it down to a level that would be something to negotiate from, is that something that we should consider?
Yeah, Lenny brought that up at the last meeting, the same thing. I mean, how much money do we really need?
Yeah.
But I think,
Brochures, why don't you, Leonard, you've worked with the
Yeah.
brochures.
The Bouchers, when people contact them, they feel out the organization. And most of them are looky-loos. They don't have a pot to piss in, okay? But they might have somebody that has $2 million, and that's the most they could spend. Do we want to consider an offer for $2 million? That's something we need to tell the Bouchers. We would be interested in, what's that number? Is it 2 million? Is it 2.2? What's that number we would be willing to consider as an offer? Or do you want to consider any offer and let them present it?
What is the amount we're asking for?
It's currently 3.3 million.
Who decided that amount?
They did. That was their fair market value.
but
They
that
did
was
a
then.
study this thick, you wouldn't believe all the work they've done. They know everything around here, they know every
Yeah,
neighbor.
They did about
The value of
60-page
every
analysis of our
building.
property. So,
The The Bouchers, they only deal with selling churches.
Yeah, they're the
They're out of
real estate
Orange
agent.
County.
Is it known as Bashore Realty, or what's it known as? What's their
Boucher-
official name?
What's their official name? It's on that thing I had on.
Shore
my
Real
PowerPoint.
Estate, I believe
Yeah,
it's Shore Real Estate.
Yeah.
It's a father-son team. The son's an attorney, specifically into commercial real estate. They manage a lot of rentals for churches that have closed and churches that no longer occupy that premises but rent it out and send the income to them. Bert, you had a question?
Yeah, just out of idle curiosity, say the church sold for $3.3 million. Where does the money go?
That's-
Where's the money gonna go?
Well, we pay off our
Okay,
loan.
That's $200,000.
Right. So we have 3.1, we pay a commission to them. I don't know how much that is. That's, say we end up with 2.9 million. That's going to go in a bank account,
General fund.
and we'll have to invest it, and then we figure out as a congregation what to do with that.
We could pay full salary to a really good pastor with all the benefits
For years.
for many years.
$2.9 million, I would hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Although I will say that the last time we called a full-time pastor, we offered $55,000. Yeah, you're talking. Everybody wants medical. Everybody, so you're over $100,000 a year.
They also want to ship their little car from.
Exactly.
And the mother-in-law is sure already
Yeah,
done.
the mother-in-law's property.
Which you'll have plenty of money if that's the right choice again.
I don't think that.
I can't think I would ever do that.
Probably dodge a bullet there, but, that's something, again, like even the amount I think that we should think about, fielding offers that are, I don't know what we've set up with them, but I mean, it's the congregation's choice to, whether we're gonna sell this property. It's not the council's decision, really. So if someone brought an offer, we could say, hey, the congregation wants us to field any offer, right? And we could tell you what it is, whether it's ridiculous or not. I mean, I would think that you would take less than $1.5 million or something for this property. I mean, it's worth it, but it's only worth what someone will pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the problems if we were to try to hold on to the property and then try to find someplace, we'll go to Spirit of Joy, but then keep the property and then rent our property out to other people and everything. We're still gonna be in charge of the maintenance, the deferred maintenance, and all the other things on these structures. And I know personally, the deferred maintenance on this property is very high.
Yeah, even if you got like a property management person that could take care of it, you still have to pay for the air conditioning, pay for the large expenses, you're right.
That's right.
So there's a whole litany of things you can consider in this whole maintenance thing
Right.
going down the line.
Yeah. It's tough to be you guys know, it's tough to be a landlord. It's not easy. So that's something now you're a landlord if we do it that way.
What has to happen immediately for us to take any action, other than to stay here and pay our bills and be who we are today? What will be the first thing?
Good question. That's a good
Yes.
question.
Yeah, we don't have a timeline because we don't have an
I
answer.
think the immediate action would be just what we said. We have an interim pastor who we don't know what her future holds, and we're relying on what do you call them? What do you call those pastors?
Supply pastors.
Supply pastors, and it's getting more difficult to find them. We have found some. So I think it would be the immediate thing would be that our congregation's like, hey, I'm tired of not having a pastor on us. That'd be probably the biggest input in a way. If everybody sees the worship experience becoming non-fulfilling, would be your first thing, right? Would you agree with that, Larry? And that's what you were saying. You're concerned about the meaningful worship.
Yeah.
So then it would be. I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. Everybody's like, this congregation would have to say, okay, we need to do something. Really, that's all it comes down to. Because if not, we could just keep limping along. But you're having people drop off that we're taking care of. Debbie?
The prospects of having to manage the property and us being off somewhere else doing something is horrific in my mind. It's like, oh, no. I mean, I don't think that's a very good idea.
Well, I'll say this.
I think that we should really look into lowering the price, see if we get some other kind of offers for that, because we don't want to just leave it abandoned. I mean, it's better to
when Bill asked that question, and now I thought about it for a minute, my thought was, well, when Red died, that was the end. You know, and then here we are. So, you know, I don't know what that moment is. I thought that moment was when Red died. You know, it's like, now what happened? Red was this big person here. And we all pitched in, but I thought without Red, what are we going to do? Well, look at it. That's been, I don't know how long. So there really isn't anything in a way. How long can we hang in there? That's what it comes down to in my mind.
Well, the meaningful worship.
That's the big thing.
It will, I mean, you know, Rachel has got her life building. We want her to
That's
go
the
on
idea.
the journey that she's going on. But
Do you have a
that's your problem, is
We
the
can't,
worship.
we can't hear back here, it sounds muffled.
Linda, we can't hear you.
Okay, Linda is saying is,
Stand up and turn around.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Our problem, I think, is the meaningful worship. We can continue this until we all die off, which we're all working on. Well, it's the fact. We've seen it happening. But it's the meaningful worship. Without a core pastor, and Rachel's trying to fill that job, but she's also on this journey that she's asked to go on, and we want her to go on. It doesn't include us 3 years from now, and we have to recognize that. So what are we going to do? It's the meaningful worship. Brian can bring us meaningful worship, so I don't think we should just say, oh, well, we just are not going to include that. But by the way, we've been talking this talk with Spirit of Joy since 2013, for sure. I mean, openly talking about it.
Since Pastor
And it
Johnny
kind of, it goes up in it. When John left and the next one, the one that died. Larry came in. I was over there with Larry at several meetings that they had, but it wasn't real formal. We were trying to play it cool. And then remember the picnic we all had with them and everything? We were working towards that. It just never gelled.
It hasn't gelled. Same thing.
I don't think it ever will.
Same thing happened to them when they went.
Yeah.
Charlie, did you have something to say? Okay.
Charlie, we brought up the topic of the price. And the price. And would we be willing to take a lower amount? And what is that amount? Is it $2 million? Is it $2.5 million? Is it $1.5 million? And how do we communicate that to the Bouchers? So if they get somebody that walks in the door, calls them, and says, hey, our budget's $2 million, can you have something for us?
This I do know about, because 2 years ago.
Project as we're announcing.
Stand up. Face the people. 2 years ago, you will remember that I came to you in the council and said, what would we be willing to accept? We need to have a number that's the lowest number that we could absolutely get away with. And everybody says, oh, well, we don't want to think about that. We just want 3.3 million. And we don't want to tell anybody that we want less than that, or we don't even want to think about less, because then they might decide that they don't want to give us as much. No, it doesn't work that way. To have, and the Bouchers, I've talked to the Bouchers about this many times, because this comes up. And the thing is, like they were saying, they need to know what they can play with, because they can see people that maybe they don't have quite 300 or 3,300,000. But maybe they are good if we could get them in at, say, 2.5 million or something like this. Because right now, churches are having difficulty coming up with money, because, you know, it doesn't always come in. Our church has been doing extremely good, because they've been making all of their bills. They have money in the bank. I can remember many times when we thought we were solid. We didn't have any money in the bank. Pastor Larry many times didn't get his check on time because we didn't have any money. So, but now we're doing good. Everybody has chipped in, and we're doing good. As long as we don't expend money on things we don't absolutely need. I'm saying this for a reason. Because we tend to do that.
Well, the full-time pastors would really give us.
Well,
The lack of full-time pastors is really where our budget
that would
is
help.
strong.
That would help.
That's why our budget, that's what we're doing so well financially. We're not paying $100,000 a year.
That's true. But what I'm saying is, we don't want to spend that money that we're saving up for a full-time pastor, spending it on things like taking out the bushes and stuff like that. We don't want to do that, because we don't want to spend money that we really don't have. Because no matter where we go, no matter what we sell this place for, we're going to need to be able to afford rental on someplace and a pastor, right? Okay, so those are some of our baselines that we have to look at, and I've explored some of them, but that was 2 years ago, and times have changed.
Things have changed, yeah, COVID
Yes.
changed everything.
You just talked about those three options.
Right, that's what we- yeah.
Before you came in,
Okay,
so.
so, but what I'm saying is, you guys are doing good, and it's tough to be patient. And the last I heard, and I think Leonard already knows this, there are two people that they're looking at. So, but they go through a vetting, just like we went through a vetting on them before we ever hired them. And they do the same thing with every church that comes in. They go over what kind of background they have, what their support is, do they have a synod, do they not have a synod? Are they a real church? That comes up. And there's a lot of people that just think, oh, we could use this property. Oh, we had one that they were crazy about it. They walked all over the place. They wanted to use it for a charter school. We can't do that because of our zoning. And I know they talked about that last week. So there have been people that are interested, and it's just getting the right match. And that does take long. They told us to start with that it was going to take at least 3 years, and then COVID. So, you know, it does take a while. But there are people out there, and like Jerry's one of the brochures. He keeps an eye on everything that's going on. I mean, he usually tells us whether the churches in the area are for sale before anybody else knows. But the thing is, it takes a while, and he's starting to see more interest come in since COVID is, you know, people are taking their masks off and stuff. And that's what he's told me. He's starting to see things perk up.
I think that it would be wise for us to have a range of value that we're willing to accept. It'd be good for us. But I know, I mean, probably everybody here knows real estate agents. If they find somebody they think they can sell to, they're going to bring you that offer. So probably they haven't had an offer yet.
He is.
That's realistic.
No, because he did on his last two. I know about them.
Yeah,
But
they couldn't qualify.
they
did
haven't qualified.
Right.
But I want to talk to him. I mean, it's only been 2
Right,
years.
that's what I'm saying. If he had someone that he thought could afford to buy this property and they offered it 1.5, he'd bring you that offer.
No, he will, yes, and he will. That's exactly what he will.
That's what I'm saying.
When it
That's what
gets to something firm, but he's not going to bother us with people
Right.
that are looking.
So what I'm saying is that the idea of selling this for less is really kind of a moot point because that's until someone offers less,
Okay.
we don't have that option.
True, but we have, okay, I'm only the pass-through between the real estate agents and the council. So the council has to say, yes, we would be willing to take this much. Then I pass that on to him and say, yeah, you know, if they're in that age, go ahead. Because then they will vet them for, I mean, they've got a general idea how much money they've got to donate and stuff. But then they will start looking into it more specific. But I could never get anything from the council.
So as a council, we are not able to give a binding number to the Bouchards.
That's kind of it as to what the
So
minimum
that's why I
is.
think the council is limited in what we can tell you. Now, can we tell them that we would be interested in between
Any offer.
2
No.
to 2.5, and if something comes in that range, you need to present it to us?
You'd say anything over
Okay.
2.5.
All right.
And then they would start looking into that. You know, if somebody came to them, because we've had several people, developers, for instance. We have some. There was one from Temecula, and I don't think I mentioned that. But anyway, I know there was one from Temecula, and he had all kinds of plans, but then he got down to that problem, the zoning. And there are ways, and I think the council should talk to Jerry and Ryan, because there are ways that we have come up with that could work, but the council has to work with it. And the council has to be willing to think of something like that, because developers aren't going to give us $3.3 million. We know that. And there's other things that the council has to decide about. Working with the community pantry, I think that was brought up last week. We would break it off and split the two. There's all kinds of little things, and I understand why the council hasn't dealt with it. There's been 3 different councils involved in this. And I can understand why, because nobody wants to feel like they're giving it away.
The other thing is, nobody's even approached me that said, you guys have to make some kind of decision.
See, because,
Yeah, I have not heard one offer.
I know,
since
that
I've been-
was, okay, because you're just new in January. And see, and.
How new do you have to, how old do you have to be?
Well,
Nobody
see,
said a word, and I have talked to Jerry on the phone, not Jerry, the dad.
right, Jerry's the.
Jerry's the dad, for hours. He talks for hours.
Yeah,
And he never said to me, I'm waiting for you guys to give me a number.
that's because that stuff goes through me. And they set that up to start with because we had people that were here at that time that aren't anymore. But they kept bothering people. It got to the point where we almost didn't have anybody that wanted to deal with us.
Because everybody's calling about it.
Because everybody was calling them and they couldn't trust anybody. So that's why the council set it up that it goes through me. Because, and Jerry, there's a lot of phone calling back and forth.
Well, and the other thing, any offer, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but any offer is going to have to go to the congregation
Yes.
for approval.
Yes.
So you already have that built in. It's not just the council. What's built into this is a organization that's not one, it's like you don't have a president of this company who's going to say we're selling this building. We have a lot of people that we have to make sure they're meeting. So any offer to me, if they were to make any offer, that should be coming to the
But see,
congregation.
that's not what we.
That's my, right,
Yeah,
right.
we can, I never got to that point where.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing here is that the council needs to give you since you are the liaison,
Yeah.
and that you should give them the information, but we need to decide that as a council, not here
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
But you should get that number, because any offer, if someone offers $100,000, that's
No,
ridiculous,
we know
and we
that
know
the
that,
we
but
know
that's
that the
something you
property-
guys decide.
We know that the property itself there is worth $200,000
Yeah.
because they've already told us that.
So whatever it is.
What is worth
The property itself.
Without the building.
They don't want the
The
building
amount
to
of
develop
square
and
feet
go
of
down to the.
ground.
The lot across the street on the corner is on sale for $900,000, I believe.
Yeah, with nothing on it.
Nothing on it.
So it just depends, again, it depends what someone offers. Yeah.
Well, so shouldn't the process be listening to Charlie? She's the liaison between the brochures and the council. So if something comes to her, shouldn't she go to the president and the president will present it to the whole council and have a council meeting and then we talk? And if it's something that is real, we can go to the congregation.
Yep.
Yes,
It seems like we've got too many things
That's
going.
exactly the way it's set up.
Okay.
Yes.
So since I haven't heard anything,
Because
no offers, that means you didn't get one.
That's
Right.
And they don't have one.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So there isn't anything we could have done yet.
Nope.
Right.
And you will probably hear, I don't know who was, we had like 2 or 3 people that were shown the facilities. I know I showed it one time, and this place is big when you start walking around.
Yeah.
It's just really killer. But I think you showed somebody around too, didn't you, Leonard?
With the Bouchons only.
Yeah. Yeah, they come out to listen in to what everybody's telling us. So when they.
I just unlocked doors.
Yeah. And if they ask a question, like, they ask
Right.
about the kitchen, so I can tell them about the kitchen. And I also picked up information about if somebody's looking around me and say, oh, this looks like a great kitchen, or they go, oh, is this the kitchen? Then we know what we have to concentrate on, maybe put a page or whatever.
I think we have to remember this meeting too was about all our options, not just selling it. We were talking about whether we, join with Spirit of Joy, and not only whether we sell this property or not, but if we don't, what happens next? Like Bill was saying, okay, what has to happen next? Well, you're exactly right. What does have to happen to make that move? We just have to decide as a congregation it's time to make that move. And I think that Linda said it best. Like if we don't have this a worship leader, and that's for our traditional type of worship, we need a worship leader. We want someone to give us communion. We want someone to be there for us in visitation and all those things. Then you're going to need to make a decision then.
I have a question about that. If we seem to be doing okay financially right now, temporarily, who knows how long
We can't hear you.
We're doing good financially.
We're doing things, right now, we're okay, we're financially okay.
But how long are we going to be able to maintain that? Because if we don't have meaningful worship, people are going to be drifting away.
Right.
Right.
How long can you maintain your giving if you're not getting meaningful worship?
Yeah.
Well, how many of you feel like the services have been meaningful so far? Okay, and we plan to keep that going as long as we can. So I'm working out into August and September already
Right.
for supply pastors.
Debbie had her hand up first.
Actually, Linda did.
That's okay, go ahead.
You know, when we started this whole thing years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, I think that we had, or I had in my mind that, oh, you know, it's gonna sell right away. And so then we started thinking, okay, well, what are we gonna do? You know, we've got all this stuff, are we gonna sell this stuff? Are we gonna, you know, we went through the whole thing with the inventory and all that kind of stuff. And now here we are with a screeching halt, you know, it's like, okay, the next step needs to happen. You know, we need to lower the price, we need to decide what we're going to, ultimately, we need to decide what we're gonna do if we sell it. Because it's gonna get sold, right, at some point. Because if it doesn't get sold, well, it's a moot point, we don't have any money then.
Or nothing.
Right.
Well, I figure we're gonna start doing some yard sales. We can start as early as this summer. We have, you know, a huge
Inventory
inventory of stuff we're not even using in closets. We could start selling stuff already.
And that'll be the next meetings about that. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that at the inventory meeting. I'll show you how we counted and why we decided this. We would keep this many in case we do go to a rental and we need those chairs, and this many we can sell. And we need this many tables, and we need a cross. We want that one, or we want another one. That one's too big, the one in the sanctuary, can't take it anywhere. You know, but we have some other crosses too. I mean, we have a plethora of things. We have so much stuff that we can go through that and we can value it and start trying to sell it.
I think to Debbie's point, that's why Mary created these meetings, these table talks, was the fact that there's kind of a prevailing feeling like, well, nothing's happened. You know, you're right. Nothing's happened. 2 years, nothing's happened. Well, because we haven't gotten an offer. Whether it doesn't matter what the offer was, we haven't gotten an offer. So what can we do? Well, that's what Mary decided. Well, we can do is communicate to everybody what's going on. And then you guys can tell the people who aren't here, here's what's going on. I do know what's happening. Not like, I don't know what's going to happen in this church. We're just drifting in the wind. Well, we're not. You know, that's what Mary's idea was. We're not drifting in the wind. We have a liaison for our agent. We have agents. So that's what this is about.
I have a question about finances. You all say that we are okay financially. This is an aging property, and lots of stuff can go wrong with aging properties. What if we have a really expensive issue somewhere?
Yeah, that's
Plumbing or pipes or...
That's exactly why we're having these meetings, because that's a very real possibility. You know, and what we've done so far is Leonard and Jack and the guys who are on the property committee and all that, they've handled it. So we've been handling it individually.
Yes, exactly.
Right, and so.
And without you, where would we be?
That's the idea, you know, that's why these discussions need to happen. That's why Mary wanted this too, so we can start thinking about what happens if that happens, so it doesn't just happen one day and we don't know what to do. We've discussed it and we, you know, looked at what our options are.
We have a lot of spokes on the worship, ministry wheel, and different jobs are being done. And
we appreciate you.
Well,
God bless you all.
everybody is doing a great job.
Right.
Our audiovisual team.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to replace them.
Yeah.
So everybody has a gift, and they're using their gifts in this ministry. It's called Trinity, and it's working. But eventually, we're going to have a spoke get broken.
Just like Linda said.
Right? And then what do? So eventually, we're going to have to make a decision. My concern is when Rachel leaves us, we're going to be probably missing a key part of our ministry team. And anyway.
My question is, asset-wise, financially, we appear to be in great shape. What about our declining attendance? 4 years ago, we were doing, I think you quoted 80 or something.
Right.
We're down to 40 or less. We haven't been there, I'm not helping with that numbers, but what do we do to increase our membership?
I think that's a whole nother, and we've had meetings since 2013 about that, and that's what I tried to say in the last week during the history. I remember Pastor John on Wednesday night, we came in here, he had some candles. Do you remember that? On Wednesday night, he was trying to bring young people in. We had candles and the room was subdued, and we had the guitar playing to bring young people. We've done so many efforts, and that's what Jeff said. We're not alone. All the churches are losing people. So now the decision that has to be made, and that's what we were doing with redevelopment. We were trying to reach out to the community, bring people in. So now we're at this point, well, nobody's bringing people in. So what do we do to maintain the meaningful worship we want and maintain Trinity, or can we not maintain Trinity?
You know, it's funny because we might feel down about ourselves, but actually we're a very warm and loving group. And when people come, look at this family that just joined our church with 6 children. And that other family in the back, Charlie and Carol and Suzanne, and they're going to join officially, I think, this Sunday. And it's like, okay, we are not dead in the water, you guys. Don't kill us before we are dead. We're not dead. We're doing well. We actually have new people coming in, and we have a family of 6 children. They'll all be here at the Mother's Day party on Saturday. All the kids, everybody in the family. So, I mean, we have a lot going on. I agree. It's going to be hard when we lose our intern. Rachel is the glue that binds us all together. She's what makes those pastors I bring in know what they're doing up there, because it's different in every church. It's a little different. So she sets up those bulletins and gets all that organized with Christine's help in the office, typing in all of it. Without Rachel, it's going to be hard, but it's part of her training. We are supporting her 100%, and she's supporting us 100% back. And it's just a real joy that we have this. God gave this opportunity to us. But when like Dave said, when one door closes, another door opens. I am not a negative thinker. I think positive, and I think there's going to be another way we can go. Even if it is cohabitation. I know that sounds nasty.
It's legal, it's legal.
They came up with the idea from that church after the not nice meeting they had. Later, somebody probably was rethinking about maybe how they treated them. I don't know. And they came up with the idea. Well, why don't they, come and stay as a church, to be with us in the same church, but different churches. That's creative.
Just remind them who supported them for 20
You're
years.
right.
I was here when we
Linda has
sent
something to add.
that mission church out. I know very well how that started.
All of tonight, it sounds like we're trying to replace, obviously, the easiest way, not that any of this is easy, is to get another church in here. To sell to another church. We're talking, we think that way, and I know that there's a zoning issue. How much have we challenged the city on the zoning issue? And what if we took the concept of, think about it, if you're selling a house, and they really want your house, but you know what? Right when the sale's starting, the furnace goes out. Somebody's going to have to replace that furnace. Either you are, which is going to lower your profit on the house no matter what you do, or they're going to have to replace it with new buyers. So what if we found a developer, which personally, I don't want to see the church torn down, but when you think of all the plumbing problems, and you think of all the other issues that you've got on this place for all the buildings, really, you're in a lot of trouble. So somebody's going to start talking turkey about who's going to pay for the cost of this. If I were going to come in and buy something and you wanted $1.5 million, okay, yeah, but I'm going to have to replace that furnace, which I happen to know is a really big deal. And there's other things. What I'm trying to say is, what if we took some of this profit that we're going to be making and cut our losses a little bit by offering to pay part of the zoning fees. Maybe you could get somebody that would say, all right, let's say the zoning fee, to change it to be something else. What if the zoning fee was $50,000, which is ridiculous, but what if it was?
Probably is.
Probably more.
Maybe we pay 25 of it from the profit we're gonna make out of it. What's 25,000 when you're talking about $1 million profit? And if they pay 25, they're cutting their cost a little bit and they're getting a big, hopefully they're going to get a better deal because they're buying good property. What if we consider that? We can't just assume that our only option is selling to a church.
I think that would be very wise to consider it. I think that the council, the president council would totally consider it.
We've already
and
talked
the
about it.
congregation would consider it, but you gotta get an offer. And that's what I keep coming back to. Until someone comes and says,
You're not talking to developers
well,
though.
that's what we need to change that part. I believe.
We have, I've talked to Jerry about that.
Yeah, because
A
I
different
brought
kind
it
of
up one
development.
day after Leonard had called me, and I got to thinking about it because of the $50,000, as you said, it's 50 to 60,000. But, and so I called Jerry and I said, would it be possible for us to, and this is where you come in, Mary, because you're in charge of the endowment, if we said that we would put up the 50,000 to have it run through the Hemet planning and all of that business, and then we made a deal with the people that we would reduce the price by 50,000. And he said, well, you can't just do it that way. So we did talk about it, and I've been a little busy lately, so I haven't had a chance to talk to the council about anything. But he said, and I can say this part of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Jerry suggested that the council look into it, and that you start, he says, what you have to do is talk to the developers first. Let them know that you've got this property, how big, all this stuff, and what it could be. And you remember years ago, and Mary won't remember this, I think Leonard was still on it. They talked about working with the people that do I don't want to say old folks home, but the Lutheran homes, the retirement homes and stuff. Yeah,
Senior
the
citizens,
homes.
yeah.
And that was one of the first things he brought up. But at that time, it wasn't a viable suggestion. But he's seeing more along that lines going on. But the council has to, there again, say, yeah, we don't mind. We can start working with developers. And that's what he will do. He will work with developers. He will work with the financial people and stuff so they can get it all set up. And what he's saying...
My concern is, are you saying for us to actually spend the money now, get it
That's
rezoned?
why he's saying you'd have to work with the developer before. If you do like Linda said, which is what I was thinking you could do to start with, then he says, you don't know, because it takes 5 years for a developer to do drawings, do all of the surveys and stuff that have to be done. And I know that because my daughter used to be a civil engineer. And but it takes about 5 years to get everything approved, which is going to take a certain amount of time of that with the city. So that's why he's saying, you don't want to give them $50,000 first. You want to make sure that had some of their approvals. So we would have to work with whoever the developer is. Now, he may find a developer, but we haven't told him that we were thinking of going that way because we were always just thinking of doing the 3.3.
I was under the impression that he was already looking for a developer.
He told us he was
does.
already looking for developers.
Yes, he's looking for developers that will give us the 3.3. But if...
No, he told me that he never would expect that we would get that.
Well...
From a
But-
developer?
We need to have a conversation with both Jerry and Ryan.
Yes.
And you there?
Yes,
Yeah,
okay,
on the phone. We can do a Zoom call or,
okay.
anyway.
Yeah, because we've done this.
Okay.
But there are possibilities. In
Yeah, we need to open the floodgates and allow more people to come in at the table and if they're interested in this property, make a serious offer.
Right.
Yeah, something we
And
could
it's-
take to the congregation, because that's what has to happen anyway.
Right.
And
Well,
to me, any offer is not, to me, if someone offers us anything, it should come to you guys to decide.
And it has to. It has to come from
Right.
the church.
I mean, so,
But there are
even if
some
it's something
things-
small.
But there are some things that have been brought up. I mean, it's part of that. You guys don't know this stuff yet. You know the lot behind us? The vacant lot, I think? Okay. So I suggested, did I talk to you about it first?
No.
Yeah,
Why am I-
but it's already been sold, so we
Yeah,
can't
but
really
it
use
didn't,
it
I
as
mean,
a.
we were involved in that sort of, because we had opened it up, but the people were in escrow. It had fallen out 3 times, and it was in escrow again, and they said, if it doesn't go through this time, then we'll get something going with you guys. Okay, because then they would buy both properties, and, you know. But
They
that-
have a thoroughfare, you need, like, if you're gonna
Yeah.
put a senior citizen housing development here, you need an in and an out, you know, a street
And that would have
goes-
given them 4,
It would have been
one
nice,
on each street.
but it's been sold to somebody else.
Yeah, so,
So we have been talking to the brochures about development.
yes,
And he has explained to me that the first developer would just be a flipper. And
Could
they
be.
buy it, they get it rezoned, they raise the buildings and make it flat. Then they sell it to another developer who builds up something new.
yes. So there's different ways we can, you know, that we haven't just been sitting on our,
That's the idea.
Don't we have to rezone before we sell it?
No.
no.
No, they'll buy it and get it
They do
rezoned.
it.
The flipper
Well,
does the
if you're doing that,
rezoning.
if they're-
Normally, the developer rezones. does
See,
all that.
my concern is if
That's
we
what they
rezoned
do.
it ahead of time,
Yeah.
and we found a church that wanted to buy
And
it,
now, yeah.
now we got a problem.
That's
Yeah,
why,
rezone it back.
that's why he had said that we don't do it that way.
Yeah.
You work with the developer first and see, you know, if they get the zoning and stuff, they can get approval, because there's various different layers of that, because of the way what do they call it, the general plan, and then they've got another kind of plan, and there's layers of plans.
Bureaucracy.
Zoning,
Yeah,
yes.
I think it's important that we remember that, again, that the sale of the property is not the only option we're here to discuss, too. So we
That's
discussed the
yes.
other options, and I think it's something we just all need to be aware of. And that's part of it, is getting the council together with you so we could get
Okay.
a clear communication with them on what our expectations, maybe our expectations were that we're gonna get 3, well, I think they've changed now, you know, and so we should communicate that to them. But again, if that popped in today, if all of a sudden we sold this property, we still gotta decide what we're gonna do next.
Yes.
That's
Where do we
that's
wanna
what
go?
these meetings were
That's
about.
what it's all
Wasn't
about.
just about selling, you know, why are we, how come we're not offering $1 million? Why don't we take, like even Lenny, he was right. How come we don't take $1 million? Well, we haven't been offered $1 million. And so let's put that out there. But if we do get $1 million, what are we doing next? And that's what these are all about. What happens next? What has the council done? What can you guys do to help get there?
We already decided to sell. That was back 2 or
Right,
3 years,
exactly.
4 years ago.
Exactly.
You guys are forgetting we had COVID in the middle of
No,
all
that
that.
hasn't been forgotten, because he brought that up. You're exactly right. We've already decided that as a congregation it's been approved. So, but now, so what the idea here was, what do we do if, when that happens, if it happens? And also, what do we do if it doesn't happen?
So how do we have
And
a
that's what
leadership?
and that's what we brought up tonight, the 3 options.
Yeah. So I would suggest we pray about it and just, you know.
Yeah, we have a special prayer, you'll get a copy of this.
I would like to
very
read
nice
this, and
prayer.
then maybe Rachel can close us in prayer. I wanted to leave you with a little bit of inspiration. Throughout history, God's people have faced uncertain times. Just like now, we and our country are facing uncertain times. We must not lose hope, and we must help one another. And we have a very loving God that's been with this church for over 107 years now. In that period of time, this congregation, the people that came before us, didn't have a sanctuary with all the pews full. They came across challenges. So they faced challenges, and they overcame them with God. God hears our prayers and answers our prayers. So we are called to pray for God's direction. And I think if all of us start adding that to our prayer life, we'll probably see things happen a lot faster than just sitting around and talking about it. This is great, but we need to take it to God. And we need to let Him know that we're ready for whatever He has for our future. It may not be what we're thinking. So while we wait for God to lead us, we continue to pray. Let's keep hope alive. Let's stay connected as a family in Christ. let's keep the faith and continue running the race. Amen.
Amen.
So that's, I want to leave it with that. I know Mary, I think, printed it out, and I thank her for that. Maybe put it in your Bible. That'll remind you to pray for God's direction on what we're trying to accomplish here. Again, Trinity went through some tough times before. This is not the first time we've gone through tough times. And there were probably fewer people in the room back then. So, with that, Rachel? And you're getting close, so we... Okay.
Coming over here where the table of folks that. I just noticed y'all sat at the same table, that's all. Oh, gracious God, we thank you. We thank you that you give us this opportunity. You give us this opportunity to make decisions, and you give us reason in order to make these decisions. God, we pray that you would continue to guide us. We pray that you would show us the path forward, and we pray that we would always have your will in mind. We ask this in your precious Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for